First component group is the Motorguide XI3 trolling motor, and it includes the trolling motor, the mounting system, which we see here, which consists of a starboard base plate that mounts to the kayak, and then you have, like any other trolling motor system, you have a quick release mount puck, this one being a Motorguide mounting system. Minn Kota's work similar. Here we see we've mounted the motor with its mounting plate onto the base plate over the mounting puck, and now to secure it we push it in, and it's now securely locked to the kayak and it's not going to fall off the mount. I don't have a handle manufactured into my base plate, so I use just a handle similar to the Hobie kayak on the clip, and that's how I carry tow the kayak to and from the launch point. If you were a normal boater using a trolling motor, you would just step on this release lever here to be able to deploy the trolling motor. In the kayak, you're kind of ballerina pirouetting on the bow of the boat to do that. So I run a cable paracord. We pull from the cockpit on the paracord like that, and the motor is released. Then we just have to take it and push it out. Now our motor is deployed. We see the motor deployed. So I've used the collar to shorten it. Now it's shallower. What you want to look for is you don't want it so shallow that you're going to start cutting your hull with your prop. So you want to have a little bit of space. It could be a little shallower than what I have here, but you want to have a little bit of space, because when you hit things and the accelerate, decelerate, the shaft tips and flexes a little. You don't want it to kick back up into the bottom of your hull. The second component group that goes into the system is the batteries. You need to have sufficient battery power for your Motorguide motor and the ability to provide 12-volt power to your chart plotter. You don't want them to be on the same battery. The Motorguide trolling motor will interfere with chart plotter operation, and some kind of a battery box to hold the battery. Here we can see the batteries at 13.34 volts. It's nearly fully charged. 13.5 would be a full charge. I haven't completely come up with the finished result of how I'm going to develop this battery box. Right now I have two ampere time 12 volt 50 amp hour batteries, and I use these SAE connectors. Here we see the SAE connectors connected red to red, black to black. I've just put the two batteries into parallel, so that means I have 100 amp hours of 12 volt power for the XI3 being controlled through a circuit breaker, 60 amp circuit breaker in this case. They call these resettable. I don't know why. When you push the button you trip it, and then when you close the bar you reset it. But right now I have it tripped, so the batteries are available to power the trolling motor, but nothing's hooked up at this time. This battery over here is a single 12 volt 50 amp battery from Ampere Time. I use the single 12 volt 50 amp hour battery on this side to power the Yak power system, which is powering the Lowrance chart plotter and the NMEA 2K bus. In the future it's going to power USB ports for the GoPros and possibly a micro power pole on the back of the kayak. 12 volt power to power the Yak power system uses an SAE connector, and I have an SAE port on my battery box. In order to get 12 volt power from this battery, to the yak power system through the SAE connector, I have to connect the connector for the port to the battery. So now we look over here, and our yak power system is powered. Button 1, glowing red, is now powering the Lowrance HDS Carbon. When we're ready to use the NMEA 2K bus, button 2 will power up the NMEA 2K bus. Here we see the yak power switching unit that's inside the hull. I have the controller for the yak power system in the bucket that normally goes in the square hatch in front of the seat. To power the trolling motor, we're dealing with heavier current, so we use Anderson connectors. The gunk you see there is dielectric grease. This connector goes into the hull in the same through hull that the transducer cable comes out of. This is your Guardian mount, the roller where the cable comes down to raise and lower it. And then I've got 3 spots. One of them is transducer, hot from the battery box, ground from the battery box. We can also see running down the inside of the hull the 8-gauge wires. Green is ground in this case. Black wasn't available when I went to buy the wire, so I used green for ground and red for power. Take our Anderson connector. They will only connect one way. And here we see the battery box is now powering the cabling through the hull to the front to the trolling motor, using these two 12-volt 50 amp hour ampere time batteries. And over here we have a single battery, 12-volt 50 amp hour from the same company, that is powering the yak power system. The two for the motor are in parallel, so we've got a total of 100 amp hours. We've got a shunt that can meter amps and current flow as well as voltage, and a simple voltage meter up here, and then we have our circuit breaker. Now right here we see another Anderson connector. That's for the Motorguide XI3. Here we have a Anderson connector for the Motorguide cable. And if you look at that, that doesn't fit. That would be an incorrect connection. It would be hot to ground and ground to hot. So these are always set up so they will only connect one way, and that's the correct way to power the motor. But right now we can see we've connected power, the trolling motor to the in the hull power, the battery box to the in the hull power. If I put the circuit breaker back to reset, up here we see our trolling motor is now powered up. Here in the bow hatch we see an array of 3 T's, a gray T, a red T with yellow connectors, and on the end over here a black T. You'll see all of these are connected to each other along the top flat portion of the T. That's called the backbone. The wire or cable coming out of the bottom is called the drop. The backbone is what constitutes the NMEA 2K bus. So the drop from the black T goes to the Lowrance. The drop from the red T is power going to button 2 on the yak power system. And the gray T is the cable that goes to the Lowrance Point One compass. This cable here connected up on the top to the backbone. They're actually the same cables. It's just a NMEA 2K cable. If you connect it to the bottom, it's called a drop cable. If you connect it to the top with the backbone, it's called a backbone cable. It now is going over to the through hull on the port side. If we come up here, we see the control cable from the Lowrance to the Motorguide, we want to look for an arrow on there. It's really hard to see. It's actually opposite of this circle. So if you line up the circles, you've also lined up the arrows. It's important that the arrows are lined up or it won't be connected properly. Unlike NMEA 2K, you can connect this improperly. So the correct order to do it in, power up the Motorguide. If I put the circuit breaker back to reset, so there it goes, it's powered up. It's not got its GPS yet. Let's see it get a blue light here where the satellite is. It's looking and calculating, do I have a good satellite signal? There it goes, we've got good satellite. It's to power up the Lowrance, get a good GPS signal. So now we look over here, and our yak power system is powered. Button 1, glowing red, is now powering the Lowrance HDS carbon, which we see it has. So now we go here. As I said, normally this bucket would be in the hatch, and hit button 2. Button 2 has now powered NMEA 2K, which means the Point One is also now online in the system. So if we come over here and go to settings and come on down to network, let's go to NMEA 2000. Let's go to diagnostics. There it goes. Okay, NMEA 2000, bus state is bus on. We see it sending and receiving messages. We close that. Now let's go to device list. We showed you this on the water, but it's maybe a little easier to see here. HDS Carbon 9, all of its components are up and talking. MTGD, the trolling motor, has its own compass. Interestingly, chart plotters do not. They actually orient their chart and steering pages to track, not heading. And if you're not moving very fast, which quite often is the case in a kayak, you're not really getting a very stable indication on that. So the Point One is really for that purpose, not for controlling the trolling motor. We see the Point One is here. See where it says calibrate. Normally they keep their heading calibration, but if they lose it, you push that button and it'll tell you to steer the vessel at a proper rate. It'll show it on the screen. I'm not going to do it here because I don't want to screw up the calibration of my compass. Lowrance has some YouTubes that show you how to do that if you go with this system. Now let's go back and let's go to data sources and let's go to GPS. Oops. All data. There we go. See, it has auto. It has HDS Carbon 9, its own GPS. But on a previous setup, I set this to get its data from the Point One compass. You have to do that during your initial setup, or it's just going to pick the data source it chooses to use. If we look under rudder, let's do here. Here we go. If we look under rudder, we see Point One there. So the rudder is using Point One as well as the GPS system. So now it's basically set up so the Lowrance can control the trolling motor. So if we go, just hit the page button, and we pick up a page that has steer on it, let's say. That's all we need sitting here on the ground. Okay. We see on the left side, we see trolling. Being a good boy, Bear. Good boy. And away we go.